The government is the reason that poor people are getting poorer and rich people are getting richer, not some 150 billionaires in the UK. Welcome back to Crypto Warehouse. My name is Mike, and today we're going to have a look at what Gary Stevenson, Zack Polanski and the Green Party have been talking about for the last few months and try and explain the other side of why they are predominantly going to be wrong and why they're going to make the problem worse. Now, we are a crypto channel. We talk about Bitcoin, Ethereum and Solana. So why am I sitting here talking about inflation and governments and money printing and rich people and poor people? Well, the simple fact is that Bitcoin is one of the ways that you can get out of this cycle, because Bitcoin can be held from as little as 1 sat. You can hold $5 or $10 worth of Bitcoin. And here's the trick. As they print more money, the value of Bitcoin will go up. So that's why we're going to talk about it. Also, I think they're being disingenuous when they tell you what they're telling you. So let me go back to the very beginning. Gary Stevenson and the Green Party and Zack Polanski, who have taken on board what Gary Stevenson have been talking about, they are talking about bringing in a wealth tax. And this wealth tax is going to target the super wealthy. But it isn't targeting the super wealthy at all. It's targeting people with assets worth more than so many £1 million. Now, that might sound very, very just on paper, but let me try and explain roughly why this is not the fault of rich people and why it is the fault of the government. Gary Stevenson is correct when he says that COVID and prior to COVID, the gap between the rich and the poor has grown so massively. And the reason is because of the amount of money that has been created by the UK government. And we're going to use the UK as the base here because that's predominantly what we're talking about and predominantly where our audience is from. If you have inflation at, let's say, for argument's sake, 10% over the last 4 or 5 years, it's probably not far off from what we've had. You know, your loaf of bread, your pint of milk, your bag of potatoes, they're probably up 50% over the last 5 years. So let's say 10%. There is one massive difference between middle and poorer classes and, say, the upper and rich classes. And that is how their wealth is, or in the poor cases, not held. Rich people tend to own more expensive housing. They own stocks and shares, maybe gold, maybe even Bitcoin. They hold assets which are a store of value. Now, poor people and middle class people, they probably don't own their own home. They probably don't have stocks or shares. So the value of their wealth is pretty much hand to mouth from their wages. And this is where the problem lies. When you bring in, for example, a minimum wage, or when you print money to create 30, 40, 50% of all the pounds that have ever been created, and you create that in a short space of time, you put that money into a system, and that system can only produce so many loaves of bread, so many eggs, so many beef burgers. So because the demand increases, because there is so much more money in the system for the same amount of resources, the prices will rise. So in terms of somebody not earning a great deal, the cost of living goes up, and in most cases it's gone up 50%, but wages haven't gone up anywhere near that, and we're going to get to that point in a second. But what pumping money into the system also does is it increases the value of properties, stocks and shares. In the case of Bitcoin, Bitcoin has gone up considerably over the last 5 or 6 years. Gold and silver, they've also increased. So wealthy people who might be sitting on, say, £10 million, their value is suddenly £15 million because the money in the system has inflated everything that they own. Whereas when you look at people who don't have assets that are living on a wage, everything around them costs 50% more. So when you blame the rich for sucking all of the resources out of the system, they're not eating more potatoes, they're not eating more beef, they're not eating or drinking, more milk. What they're doing is they're sitting on assets that are appreciating above and beyond inflation. Wages, on the other hand, do not keep track of inflation. They can't keep up. You're lucky if you've had a 10 or a 15% wage rise over the last 5 years. So you are 35%, maybe 35% poorer today than you were 5 years ago in terms of your purchasing power. Whereas the rich are probably 50 or 60 or even 70% more wealthy now than they were 5 or 6 years ago. And that comes down to printing money. The more money you put into a system, the more things cost, because unless you are expanding your economy, i.e. making more eggs, making more bread, making more potatoes and more beef burgers, and unless you're creating more, you're not going to see those prices stay the same. They're going to go up. Now, going back to the minimum wage, which the Labour government are about to introduce. Now, I have absolutely no problem with people earning a minimum wage. Let's get that off the table right now. But what will happen is it will increase the cost base of every single thing in the system. So if you increase the minimum wage by 10%, that will be passed on to the consumer. So your cup of coffee, which today might cost you £4, that's going to cost you £4.50. So have you really gained by having a minimum wage? No. And what also happens with the minimum wage is it pushes you back into the next tax bracket, or the minimum tax bracket, which means you will be paying over a percentage of your minimum wage back to the government. So it's a false sense of wage growth. And all of these things affect the poorer people in society and benefit the richer people in society. So when you have the likes of Zack Polanski saying we just need to borrow more money, what he's saying is we just need to put more money into the system, which is like pouring fuel onto the fire. And the only people getting warm are the rich people. So as we pour more money into the system, their assets will become worth more. But they technically don't. It's that the pound is worth less. Inflation has stripped the purchasing power, so their assets seem that they're worth more. You could have somebody who's living in a house that was worth £1 million that's now worth £3 million. It's the same house. They haven't moved. And now suddenly it's worth 3 times what it was than what they paid for it. A poor person paying rent, on the other hand, is seeing their rent go up and up and up. So they are becoming poorer and poorer and poorer. And that is what people are not telling you. And that is why I've made this video, because of course Bitcoin is one of the answers. Holding $500 of Bitcoin from maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even 7 or 8 years ago, is now worth $5,000, $6,000. Maybe in the future, if you buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin today, maybe that $1,000 worth of Bitcoin today will be worth $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 of Bitcoin in 5 or 6 years' time. So you need to look for stores of value, because that's what rich people have. They have a store of value. Gold, paintings, silver, property, stocks, shares, they're all stores of value. If you strip the money printing out of the American S&P 500 and the American stock market, if you strip away money printing, what you will find is the stocks and shares in America haven't really moved over the last 20 years. They've gone up because of the amount of money being pumped into the system, the amount of money swirling around in the system. Now, we're not going to talk about the Cantillon effect, but that is also something to bear in mind when a government starts to pump money into the economy. Who does it go to first? It goes to the people closest to the government. It goes to the banks. It then goes to the companies which are employed to carry out the new roadworks or carry out the new buildings being put up, whatever it might be. They are the closest to that new money that's been created, so they will benefit first. And by the time it gets to you, I'm afraid to say your £100 worth of shopping this year is worth £95 worth of shopping next year, and £92 of shopping the year after. Your shopping trolley that you might have that cost you £100 when you used to go out with your mum or dad, that shopping trolley is maybe now even a handbasket. So don't blame the rich people, blame the government, and blame the way that they borrow more money than they bring in. So they are having to create more money to sustain the economy. And what we really need is we need them to stop printing money. That's the solution. But none of them will do that. Why? Because the economy will appear to be in a recession. The economy will appear to shrink. People are telling you that inflation is coming down. But that doesn't mean prices are coming down. It means they're going up less quickly. And that's another lie that you're told. But I'm not going to make another video about that. This isn't an economics lesson. I just wanted to get that across as best as I can. Because I've seen a few people talking about taxing wealthy and bringing in a wealth tax, whatever else that might be. And I'm all for more equality. What I'm not for is people lying to you about what has caused the inequality. And it is not several billionaires. It's money printing, it's money velocity, it's inflation, and it's governments. They are the people to blame for you not having as much money as you had 5 or 6 years ago. That is the truth. You can go and study as many people as you want. Go and look at Milton Friedman, for example. Go and look at any economist that talks about it. Inflation is caused by governments. And that's simply all it comes down to. We do have some outliers, of course. We have the Ukraine crisis, of course, that put fertilizer up, so that doesn't help. We do have outliers, yes. But when it comes down to it, it is the government that is responsible for you not being able to buy as much food today as you did last year. And you shouldn't be blaming a rich person for living in a house that's gone up above and beyond inflation, because that's why they bought the house in the first place. So anyway, I hope you like that. If you want to get out of that situation and you don't know anything about crypto, make sure to give us a follow. We are Crypto Warehouse. We try and make crypto simple. We try and help people. And if you want a store of value, you want to start saving to outstrip inflation, you need to look towards Bitcoin. I have been Mike. You have been great. Adios.